Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for to the panelists for being here today. Director Sandoval, while the wolves in your state remain in the specific geographic area set forth for their reintroductions, they are managed as experimental populations under their own set of rules known as 10J rules. However, wolves tend to move out of those areas onto private or state lands where they are governed by the ESA. Do you think it would be better or would be more appropriate for states to manage wolves that have wandered outside of their geographic recovery area?
Mr. Chairman, Congressman Westerman, absolutely. When you think about the burden that comes with that ESA designation as being fully endangered on that wolf, and it walks outside of that geographical area defined by the 10J rule, it becomes extraordinarily problematic to be able to measure how you're going to manage that. If the state has the ability, which we're far more flexible than the federal government out there, just by the fact that we operate out in those areas on a daily basis. The ability for the state to be able to manage without having that ESA designation would be extraordinarily helpful for the state.
Okay. Mr. Gerton, there's, as my colleague from Michigan mentioned earlier, there's a recent study out, I believe the one that I saw was by Princeton and UCLA, that raised some serious questions about wolf genetics, and I believe it actually said there's only one species of wolf, the gray wolf, and the red wolf's 25% gray wolf and 75% coyote, and the eastern wolf 75% gray wolf and 25% coyote. But nonetheless, there seems to be that the scientific community is unable to reach a consensus as to whether red wolves should even be regulated. And just for the record, your agency is moving forward as if it is a listable entity. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman. We believe there is enough scientific evidence that the red wolf has been treated as and will be continued to be treated as a separate species. That's based on both genetics, behavioral, taxonomic, and other criteria.
Director Myers, are releases of red wolves allowed on private property in North Carolina?
Congressman, under the federal rules that were promulgated by the Fish and Wildlife Service, releases were only to occur on federal lands.
Okay, and Mr. Gerton, the Red Wolf Recovery Program required that red wolf populations be self-sustaining and contained to federal lands. Did your agency release wolves onto private property in North Carolina in violation of both state and federal requirements?
Yes, Congressman, wolves were released onto private land, but they were released under the larger tenets of the Endangered Species Act.
Were there any agreements with the private landowners?
Yes, Mr. Congressman, we had worked to the best of our ability with private landowners to make these releases. I believe looking at the historical record, there were a couple instances where that was not hammered out. It may have been talked about in concept, but going forward, we are intending to do all of these with some type of contract with private landowners.
So do you have any written agreements that you can provide to the committee with the...
Yes, Congressman, we can, and we can provide similar documents in other regions of the country where we work on endangered species restoration and recovery efforts for species including black-footed ferret or other species.
Can you do that in North Carolina?
Yes, we can.
All right. Director Myers, what is the general attitude about wolves in North Carolina, particularly in regards to wolves on private property?
Congressman, it's hard to characterize the general attitude. I will say that given the removal of opportunities for landowners in the reintroduction area to address concerns with coyotes on their property, the attitude towards the Red Wolf program has diminished significantly.
Okay. And I believe there was a program that was tried in Tennessee that failed back in the 90s. This program in North Carolina doesn't seem to be too successful. So, Mr. Gerton, what makes the service confident that other red wolf introductions will be successful throughout the region between Texas, Pennsylvania, and the Atlantic?
Congressman, we've learned a lot the last few years, both with the Red Wolf Recovery Program and our experiences, particularly with the gray wolf, on how to have a successful reintroduction and recovery program. The vision going forward for the red wolf is to first cement our seed stock by focusing on genetic integrity of animals in both the captive population maintained by a number of institutions, as well as some interchange with the wild population remaining on the federal estate there. Second, doing a 5-year review to make sure we're on track. Third, exploring the possibility for additional release sites with willing partners. There have been no conversations other than a concept at this point. And fourth, building on some of the hard lessons learned in other regions of the country. I, before coming back here to Washington, served as regional director for our Mountain Prairie region and was intimately involved in our ongoing efforts for recovery with wolves in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, including leading our team to write those delisting rules so we could move management of the species to state control. We want to take those type of lessons learned and apply those as well to the red wolf recovery program.